What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're looking at the Game Week 26 preview. So getting all your questions answered ahead of the Double Game Week. You put a lot of questions and topics to me on Twitter in particular. So I'm going to go through as many as I can and do a bit of a Q&A at the end as well for some of the stuff that's kind of left over. I know I didn't do one of these videos last week. I kind of just forgot. There was so much other stuff being done. But this week we are back. So if you enjoy these videos, please do give them a like. Hit subscribe if you're new around here. We're on our way to 150k, not too far off now, and let's jump into it. So there's a lot going on the screen, but I wanted to talk about Jack Grealish replacements, kind of what the latest is with him, and also how Villa fare without him, because a lot of people have the likes of Watkins up front, Target and Martinez in defence as well. And yeah, there's a lot of worries around whether or not he's back and when he will be back. So the latest we have is from BBC Sport. This is the latest that I could find anyway. So this was Dean Smith talking to them. He said, "We will assess it as we go. It's certainly not a recurrence of an old injury, which is probably good news. And it's certainly not long-term, although how short-term is short-term, I guess." He goes on to say, "I am an eternal optimist and I'll hope he is back for Leeds next week, but I'll leave it to the medical staff." So he doesn't know, basically. He hopes they're back for Leeds. We've seen other reports that say he could be out for a month. Maybe it's somewhere in between. It just all sounds like he's not going to be back for Leeds, in which case he only has a single game week, right? And the other fixture is Sheffield United away, which isn't a bad fixture, to be fair. I've kind of listed all of the fixtures as green because I feel like Wolves at home is kind of green because it's good defensive, even if it's not quite as good from an attacking point of view. Newcastle and Fulham I would still class as green fixtures for sure. And then even Spurs, which is a tough game, is in Game Week 29. That has to be green because hardly any teams are playing in that week. So it's a big bonus to have the likes of Grealish. In terms of how they've done, I found this tweet from an account called PGR_analytics, if you want to go and follow them. Jack Grealish has missed 15 games in recent years through injury. How did Villa fare in those games? 2 wins, 6 draws, 7 losses. So they didn't do too well. Scored 15, so 1 per game, and they conceded 24, so over 1 per game. They didn't do great. There are obviously some caveats for that, right? In recent years, is that the last year, the last 2 years, the last 3 years? I didn't really follow up on that too much more, but obviously it's a completely different team now, right? Villa last year in the Premier League, even with Grealish, were awful for most of the season up until kind of post-lockdown, and suddenly they were pretty good, and they've been pretty good for most of this year, although they have started conceding a few more shots, a few more expected goals and stuff like that recently as well. So that's something to think about. Even without Grealish or with him, they haven't been performing as well as they have been for kind of the rest of the season. And then obviously the tweet goes on to say, without him in 2019-20, Villa had an average expected goals value of 0.49. I'm assuming that's per game. That's really poor, right? And obviously he is the creative force. So it's all speculation because 15 games over a few years, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, I mean, it's not that big of a sample size, right? And it is a completely different team. So we have to speculate. Will there be less chances created? Yes. Will El Ghazi come into the team? Yes. Will he shoot more? Absolutely. How will it affect the defence? Well, we also have to remember that Matty Cash is out as well. So that's not going to help. They're going to have El Mohammadi playing there. So defensively, they're probably not going to be as good. And I've spoken about this a lot of times, right? Defenses aren't just built on defenders. They're also built on the attack. So take Man City, for example. They have so much possession of the ball. Every single player in that team wants to be on the ball. They're happy to receive it, to pass it on. They keep the ball for so long. That obviously helps the defence. They have to do less defending. And I feel like Jack Grealish is part of that. He wins so many fouls that he relieves pressure from the defence. He's constantly progressing the ball forward. And when you're causing other defenders from the opposition team problems, that's obviously going to help your defence. So my initial instinct is the amount of goals they'll score will go down. The amount of goals they will concede will go up. How big that is, I'm not sure, because this is a better Villa team, again, like I said, than we've seen last season. And the fixtures are still pretty good. So I got Martinez in goal. I'm happy enough with him with those fixtures. Hopefully some save points against Leeds and then a clean sheet against Sheffield United. And then Wolves, Newcastle and Fulham, they don't score a huge amount of goals. And we should remember that Aston Villa also have another fixture to rearrange. So it's not too bad. I think if you've got Villa players, I wouldn't panic. Watkins is still good value. Martinez, if you got him early, is still good value. Target is still good value, right? If you wanted to replace Grealish, now I probably am doing this, unless we get an update from Smith that he is definitely available, not just maybe and all this stuff, then I'll keep him. But if he's not, then I'm going to look to get rid. And I am going to try and hold my transfer this week as long as possible. Possible replacements, right? And this all depends on who you've already got. So I'm not going to go into great detail on them. But Gundogan, Barnes, obviously Harvey Barnes, Phil Foden, Rafinha, Lookman as well. I've put an extra O in there, but I'm not going to go back and change that now because I've just recorded that whole piece. There's lots of replacements around that price. Obviously, you could use the funds to downgrade and upgrade someone up front to Calvert-Lewin, for example. If you've got loads of money, you can go to Rashford, De Bruyne, Sterling, whoever it might be. But they are big upgrades. But essentially, the latest is we don't know if he's going to be back for Leeds. I just had this sneaking suspicion he definitely won't be. He'll probably miss both games in 26. Obviously, that game in 28 is really good. You can always bring him back. Right, by the way, I think a lot of people are worried about Game Week 29, but you do have 3 transfers after Game Week 26 to prepare your team for 29, if that's your strategy. And obviously, he plays in 29 and a good game in 30. After Game Week 30, the fixtures are pretty bad. So if he is going to miss a chunk of these, definitely time to get rid. Obviously, leave it up to you in terms of what you decide. But I'm probably getting rid this week, and it'll probably be to bring Gundogan back because I didn't. I should have done Grealish to Gundogan last week. Obviously, in hindsight, it looks like a poor move, but going to probably reverse that. And in terms of Villa as a whole, they probably will get worse. I'm just not sure it's going to be a complete turnaround to where we just don't want to have any Villa players at all. I haven't gone back and checked, right? But I feel like I get questions about hits every single week, right? I'm not going to go into specific player questions. Should I take a hit for this player into that player? I'll let you work that out yourselves. But I do want to talk about it more generally. Especially this week, right? Because it's a double game week. It's double game week in 26. There's lots of questions about whether hits should be made. I personally am probably going to take a -8, right? It does feel like if you're ever going to take a big hit, the double game week is the time to do it. There's lots of points around. There's lots of points potential. If you nail it, you're going to get a big green arrow regardless of whether you take the hit. Obviously, if you take a hit, you're going to get a smaller green arrow. But potentially, it's even bigger because you've bought in better players, right? That's hopefully the aim with all this, right? So here are kind of the specific questions that got asked or kind of points that I wanted to make. So single game week player to a double game week player, is it worth a hit? Possibly, right? And this is always going to be possibly. I think, I almost hate the hits discussion because I always see people, they'll take hit after hit after hit. They'll finally nail one, right, where it works out really well. And then you'll see a tweet like, you see, hits can work sometimes. Obviously they can. Just like transfer moves sometimes work, sometimes they don't. Captaincy decisions sometimes work, sometimes they don't, right? The key is, if you're taking out a single game week player, do you want them long term? I think Leeds are going to be a key discussion this week, right? If I take Rafinha out for a -4, okay, for, let's say, Lookman, because he's in a similar price bracket, or maybe even Gundogan. Gundogan's a bit different because he's like, I would say that's probably definitely worth it. And they're probably good examples, right? So Lookman, you get an extra fixture this week, but you're wiping 4 off his score. So let's say he gets 1 assist, 1 goal. You're pretty much wiping the assist off because you've taken the hit. Then you have to ask yourself, after game week 26, do I want Rafinha or do I want Lookman? I would say the answer is probably Rafinha. If it was Rafinha to Gundogan, for example, well, with Gundogan, you get an extra fixture this week and you get an extra fixture in 27 as well. Possibly that's then worth it. It's all going to come down to the player. I think single game week to double game week, in most cases, is probably worth it. I'm trying to think of many single game week players that I would want to keep. Outside of Leeds, basically any player that's playing in 29, I think you want to strongly consider it because... yes, you're gaining a fixture now, but you're potentially losing one in 29. So if you take out a player that's playing, let's say, again, Rafinha, you take out for someone that's playing twice this week but doesn't play in 29, then okay, yes, you can transfer them back in and try and get extra fixtures that way, but then you're using more transfers down the line. So I would strongly think about that. And do you want to keep that double game week player long term? Right? It's all well and good bringing in like a Man City player that's playing twice, or Bruno Fernandes or Kane that plays in 29. They're all good moves. But if it's just someone for this week who then has poor fixtures or that you don't want to keep long term, it's just extra transfers added. And that's kind of going to be the running theme for all of these. Changing double game week players for other double game week players is obviously a little bit different. And I would think very carefully about this. There's another one really about big hitters, which you could kind of tie in with this. Obviously, there's more risk to taking out a player that's got a double game week, but there's also a lot of players that don't have great double game weeks, right? So I've got Ben Mee, for example. Burnley have a double. I think it's Leicester and Spurs. Definitely Spurs. I believe I'm pretty sure the other one's Leicester. So they're playing twice against tough teams. I don't see a clean sheet for Burnley, right? So I would consider taking a -4 for another defender like Luca Dean, Ricardo Pereira, Castagna, whoever it might be. That might work out. I feel like there's a chance it doesn't, because as soon as Burnley get a clean sheet, well, that's 6 points at least before any bonus. You've got a couple of appearance points in the next game, unless they get absolutely smashed, which I wouldn't expect them to get like 4 or 5 goals against them. So that's like 8 points. Then the 4-point hit is 12. So whoever you've brought in has got to get at least 12 points. Now, if it's an attacking defender, it's possible. But how many times have we seen a defender in the recent double game weeks get more than like 15 points? It doesn't happen that often, right? So it's quite a big risk to do that. Same with attackers. I think with attackers it's maybe a little bit different, because there is that kind of potentially higher ceiling, right, to get it, or even a higher floor, depending on how you want to look at it. But it's always going to come down to the player, right? If it's a big hitter like I've got at the bottom, like Salah to De Bruyne, there's a lot more risk involved with that, because Salah is a player that can get his own big score, and are you expecting De Bruyne to massively outscore him and then get the 4-point hits back? Possibly. If you really think that's going to happen, then you could go for it, but it is a lot more risky that actually pays off. Again, with Salah to De Bruyne, it's a bit different, because De Bruyne then has a double game week in 27, right? So you're getting an extra fixture and hoping that he outscores him this week. So I know this is like blanket advice. I can't just say yes, it's fine, but I do think there's more reason to do it this week. So, for example, the -8 that I'm thinking about, long-term game. Well, I'm bringing in Kane. I'll potentially triple captain this week. He's then got Crystal Palace in 27, and he's got a fixture in 29 where I don't want a free hit. Therefore, that's long-term game. Can you shift squad structure? So by getting in Kane, I'm taking out money out of my bench, which I've been talking about for a while. This gives me the kind of... It just gives me a reason to do that, and also to fund the move that I want to do to get the triple captain that I want. So that's why I'm considering a -8. And in a double game week, I hope that it pays back. Would I start doing -12s, -16s? Again, they can work, but you've really got to be sure that the player you're taking out is no good. The one you're bringing in is decent this week and long term, right? And there's good reason for doing that, right? Not that you then want to transfer them out later. So as always, the hits discussion, it's always the same. It's always the same. You've got to think long term, not just for this week. And you've got to think how many more transfers it's going to cost you later on. If it's not, then it's definitely much better. If you want to take a -12, -16, absolutely fine. Just make sure it's for the right players, obviously. So many bench boost questions, right? Let me get the first one out of the way. When is a good time to bench boost? When you have a good bench, right? There are obviously some finer details like bench boost versus triple captain. Some people are thinking about this week whether to bench boost with triple leads, but you have to just, when you have a good bench, it doesn't get much simpler like that. It's like someone said, should I bench boost this week or next week? Well, I don't know. I haven't got a clue what your bench is. What does it look like this week? What does it look like next week? I've said this a million times this season. Put the realistic players on your bench, right? Don't start putting Salah and Fernandes on your bench. You're never really going to bench them in a normal week. Put your proper bench on, so your ideal 11, your proper bench. Is that a good bench boost? If it is, I would just go for it. Stop overthinking it, right? If you want to see if there's a better time, go on livefpl.net. There's a transfer planner on there. You can see what your team looks like now. You can even put your transfers in, and then you can see what it looks like in game week 27, 28, etc. And again, put your proper bench players on the bench and see if there's a better week. Obviously, if you're looking at your squad now and seeing what it looks like in 5 game weeks' time, and you're thinking, wow, that bench looks really good, bear in mind that in 5 weeks you might have transferred those players out. They might have got an injury. There might be a different player that you want. The sooner that you can do it with a good bench, the better, whether that's this week, next week, game week 28, whatever it might be. I'm going to assume game week 29 is probably not a great time to bench boost, because you can only have, what is there? There's 4 fixtures, so 8 teams. So you could potentially have a bench boost, I think, if I've done the maths right. You can only have 3 from each of those teams, 24 players. Yeah, you could potentially bench boost in 29, but it's probably not very good. But if you want to see the best bench boost, just go on livefpl.net. I can't tell you, I don't know your team. Specific questions around this though, triple leads, like would I bench boost with triple leads this week? Obviously, I'm sure if I got asked this question after Wolves, people would have different thoughts versus after Southampton. So they're playing Aston Villa. We've just spoken about them. You know, how good will they be without Jack Grealish? I think Leeds will get goals in this game. I don't know if they'll win the match, because I think Villa are still a very good team with or without Jack Grealish, but I think they'll get goals, and therefore if you've got like Bamford and Rafinha, decent. Can I see them getting a clean sheet? No, but I never really can, to be honest. I thought they did quite well against Southampton, to be fair, and Calvin Phillips, if he's back, that would be a big plus as well. If I had triple leads, I would definitely consider using the bench boost, as long as I had a fourth player that was playing as well. And the reason is, the bench boost, again, I've said this before, 16 to 20 points. Anything you get above that is just a bonus, right? So if you've got Bamford, Rafinha, could they help you get to 16 to 20 points against Aston Villa? Absolutely. Then you've got two more players as well. One of them obviously being probably a Leeds defender. And I just think it just plays on people's minds so much that they start making decisions around the bench boost. Just get it played and then play your first 11. Stop worrying about who's on your bench for the most part. Yes, obviously a playing bench is decent, especially when we're still probably slightly worried about fixture postponements due to COVID or anything like that, even though things are looking pretty good right now. Just get it played. If I had triple leads and a good goalkeeper, or if I had Meslier in goal and another outfield player, yes, I would probably use it. If it goes wrong, that sucks, but at least it's gone and you can stop worrying about it and stop making moves based around it, right? Your first 11 is going to be important for the rest of the season, especially when there's more doubles and more blanks to be worrying about. You don't want to be worrying about that bench boost, which 16 to 20 points is probably the max anyway. Bench boost versus triple captain this week is an interesting one. I mean, again, this is all going to come down to who do you want to triple captain? Like, the key question is, who else is there, right? So we know Man City are playing in game week 27. They're going to have a double game week against Man United and Southampton. Given how bad Southampton are looking right now, you could triple captain a Man City player in game week 27. Alternatively, Villa and Everton have still got a fixture to rearrange. You could triple captain one of them. You could triple captain in a single game week. If I had triple leads, I would have to consider whether there's better times to play them soon. I don't think there probably is. So I might just bench boost. And if I had like one or two double game weekers on there, plus a few single game weekers, again, I probably would choose to bench boost. Just because the likes of Fernandes and Salah have a tricky fixture. So the chances of getting like 25 points or something like that from your triple captain this week, I feel is quite low. Across the board. Even Kano I think is quite good. I feel like 15 to 18 points is more realistic. So if you can get that off your bench boost, then maybe use your triple captain on a Man City player next week, or just wait for that Everton Villa fixture to be rearranged. That might be better, but it's close. If you've got a gut feeling that there's a massive triple captain this week, just use it and use your bench boost down the line. It's all going to depend on your own team setup. Again, I wonder how many questions I would have got about Southampton if I'd asked this before the Leeds game, not after. But they did not look fantastic against Leeds. I would say Teller in particular was quite good, apart from his dive, trying to win the penalty. But otherwise, I don't really remember too many massively clear-cut chances. Vestergaard came close off a set piece, which is always a threat. But I just didn't think they looked that good. And I've said this quite a few times already, so I'm not going to go back into it. But their goal numbers are down, right? Their expected goal data is down off last season. Ings in particular is like halved. Even when he came on, he wasn't much of a threat. I guess he didn't start from the beginning, but wasn't that impressed really, right? So Southampton's numbers, expected goals on average per game over the season, 0.97. Over the last 6, 1.01. Pretty poor, right? Not a good attack so far this season. At least that's what the numbers are telling us. Expected goals conceded, 1.32. Again, not great. Last 6 is 1.61. I've said this a lot of times now. The Man United game is included in that, but they've still been poor anyway, right? Regardless of that Man United game. Then you look at the fixtures. So Everton away, I actually don't think that's a bad fixture from an attacking point of view. I'm just not that confident in Southampton attack. Then it's Sheffield United away, Man City away. I've put it as green because it's a double, but at the end of the day, that's a blank for me against Man City. I know they scored 1 goal against Chelsea. I said something similar there. But for me, that's just a blank. Anything I get against Man City is a bonus. So I would put that down as 2 appearance points, and then you hope they get something against Sheffield United. Brighton at home, again, green on paper. Defensively, it might be okay. Brighton not scoring a huge amount of goals, although their XG numbers are pretty damn good going forward. But I wouldn't see much for Southampton attack. Then they blank. Then it's Burnley at home. Are they going to have enough to break them down? So I worry about their attack. There's obviously going to be people looking at doing Danny Ings out this week. I don't think it's a bad move. The only thing I'll say is a lot of people probably going to like Calvert-Lewin. So Calvert-Lewin definitely has a better fixture in game week 26, right? Because he plays Southampton and West Brom. But then in game week 27, it's Chelsea away, I believe, for Everton. So arguably, if you add up the next 2 game weeks fixtures, Ings and Calvert-Lewin, it's not too different, really. But I feel like Calvert-Lewin, his numbers this season, just the way he's playing, Everton have played recently, probably due a few more goals, and the fact that you get to play Southampton and West Brom this week is decent. You could always swap him back to Ings if you really wanted to. But yeah, I'm not really liking them at all. I think defensively it's not great. McCarthy, I would have definitely played him in the double game week, but I think he got 3 points, which is poor. How many points is he going to get over these games? I just don't see a huge amount. So if you wanted to move them on, even with the double next week, I don't think it's that crazy a move. Again, Calvert-Lewin is definitely a better pick than Ings this week. Over the next 2 fixtures, it's debatable, but I do think he comes out on top by quite a distance, probably, to be honest. I think playing Chelsea is definitely better than playing Man City, although Chelsea's defensive numbers, again, are really good so far this season and really good since Tuchel come in as well. So it's not an easy fixture in 27, but obviously Calvert-Lewin has the potential advantage of also having a double in 28, although, like I keep saying, that is not absolutely guaranteed. And defensively, I just not seeing many returns at all. So if you've got a better move, I would definitely do it. But yeah, Southampton in a bit of a rut right now. And I'm sure Hasenhüttl will get them out of it, but the numbers are not that encouraging, and they need to change something in that attack to start getting more goals. The constant questioning around double Man City defence, double Man City attack, which way to go? I'll start off with my broken record answer. That is, if you already own double defence, right, it's probably a luxury to move to double attack, because there's probably other transfers that you need to make, right? And there's nothing wrong at all with double defence. If you're on a wild card, if you had luxury moves, you really wanted to go for double attack, then absolutely, there's nothing wrong with double attack either. Kevin De Bruyne is actually probably a massive differential right now, which is big when they've got 2 double game weeks over the next 2 weeks. So if I could easily get De Bruyne in, I already had the rest of the players that I wanted, like Fernandes, Son, Salah, Kane, somehow have all them and Calvert-Lewin, then I'd strongly look at going for De Bruyne as well. But that's probably quite difficult. But I do like him as a differential this week. Obviously, there's going to always be concerns around playing time, right? You've got a Champions League game. This will go out before that gets played. Who starts? How many minutes do they get? That should all be taken into consideration. But probably only for the next game. What about the game after that as well in the doubles? So there's lots of considerations. You look at the numbers. Even that doesn't help. Their attack is really good. Their defense is really good, right? XG over the season, 1.82 per game, 2.02 the last 6, 0.71 per game expected goals conceded, 0.53 last 6. They're an elite team, both in defense and attack. One thing I would look at is the alternatives. And if you had no Man City players, which defenders and which attackers would you go for, and who would you be most happy with, right? That might be the best way to work this out for yourselves. So in attack, for example, right, let's say I had no Man City midfielders, well, I'd look at Son, Fernandes, Rafinha, Salah, Harvey Barnes. I don't know why I always say Harvey Barnes instead of just Barnes, but I'm assuming most people know that's not Ashley. Gundogan, De Bruyne, sorry, that's obviously Man City players. Rashford, El Ghazi. So, okay, let's say I had De Bruyne and Gundogan. I could only have 3 of Son, Fernandes, Rafinha, Salah, Barnes. I'm probably quite okay having more than 3, right? I've got Son, I've got Fernandes, I've got Salah, I've got Rafinha. I'd be happy with Harvey Barnes. Rashford could even be decent as well. So I probably don't need to concentrate on having 2 Man City attackers. Obviously, Gabriel Jesus is not really part of the equation because I don't really want to fill up a striker spot with a Man City player. If I go into defence, Luca Dean, Ricardo, Castagna, Shaw, Alonso, Dunk, there's options there as well. But am I as confident? Like, I could see Fernandes, Son, Salah getting close to Gundogan, De Bruyne. Do I see the defenders getting as close to the Man City defenders? Like, if we think of it from a clean sheet perspective, possibly not. Leicester defenders could do it. Luca Dean is great going forward, but not great from a defensive point of view because Everton just don't keep many clean sheets. So I feel like possibly double defence is still better, but double attack is a big differential. So if I was on a wild card, I would strongly consider swapping. I think Gundogan and De Bruyne, just one represents really good value and one represents a really good differential. And next week, obviously, in Game Week 27, we're all going to be captaining Man City players. And if you don't want to go for defenders, maybe you want to leave your options open. So I would have a proper think about the alternatives in those positions and how genuinely happy you would be about having them in your team. And if you look at the defenders and think, yeah, I don't want any of them, then maybe you stick to double defence. If you want to go for them, and bearing in mind, defence right now is possibly one of the easiest or even best ways to get differentials. Because when I looked at people's teams earlier, before I did this bit, everybody has got Son, Fernandes, Salah, Rafinha, Gundogan. Like, everybody's got that. And breaking that is difficult because those players are so good. In defence, Diaz, Stones, Cancelo, could they become Ricardo, Castagna, Luca Dean? There's obviously risk, which I've already talked about in other videos. The fact that injury records and obviously defensive records as well for certain teams and certain players. But that's the kind of things you have to think about when you decide whether you're going for double defense or double attack. Let me know in the comments below. Okay, so just some other questions, right? And without sounding again like a broken record from previous blanks and previous doubles, the question's not necessarily how many players, it's the quality of those players. So let's take, and this is for how many, right? So how many players should I have for double game week 26 and blank game week 29? So in game week 26, right, most people are going to have at least 10, if not 11 double game weekers. Some will even have more because they'll bench boost with double game week players on their bench. But I wouldn't be surprised if most people have 11 double game week players. I think the fact that Leeds just smashed Southampton, I mean, it was 3-0. Could you call that a smashing? I feel like they could have had more. But anyway, they're a good result against Southampton. I've already seen people saying, okay, I'm just happy to play Bamford and or Rafinha this week. So we're going to see some people on Twitter and in YouTube communities, I think, play 10 because they'll play one of Rafinha or Bamford. And also, by the way, one of the reasons that will happen is because people don't want to sell them because they want to keep them for game week 29. So if you transfer them out to a double game weeker, you then have to possibly transfer them back in. Obviously, if you did Rafinha to Lookman, you get an extra fixture this week and Lookman also plays in 29. But I don't think a lot of people are going to want to do that. So for me, in double game week 26, most people are going to have 10 or 11. So that's your barometer, right? And then it depends on the quality. So I can put out 10 double game weekers as it stands, I think. If I make my transfers, I can put out 10. But one of them would be Ben Mee. And I wouldn't consider that a great player. So then you could say I've only got 9 decent ones, 1 extra, plus 1 single game weeker. So you have to look at the quality of the players. And the same for blank game week 29. I've said this a lot already. I'm not going to keep going on about it. But if everyone was fit, you got Watkins, Grealish, Villa defender or goalkeeper. You got Kane, Son, that's 5. Then you got Rafinha, Bamford, Dallas, or Meslier maybe. That's 8. Right? Then potentially some people have got like Antonio lying around, Soucek, Sofao lying around. But I think a lot of people will have 8 or 9. And then possibly other people will have more. So that's the kind of numbers that you're looking at. But again, it depends on the quality of player as well, right? Most of those players I mentioned are pretty decent. Obviously, you've got Arsenal players in there. Could be Saka, could be a defender, etc. There's other options, Brighton defenders too, that people will look to have. And people will probably get more as we go. Like, we'll have to keep an eye on the transfers between 27 and 29. And maybe we start putting that number on 9 or 10. But people are definitely going to have 8, I think. I think 8 at least, maybe more. So that's the kind of numbers that you should be looking at. And then what are my thoughts on using free hit in game week 26? Again, I don't really mind it, but it depends how many genuine changes you're making. Like for my team, I could go and get Kane and Calvert-Lewin very easy with a free hit, but I don't know how many other changes I would make outside of that. Plus, I would lose my 2 free transfers. In game week 27, I would only have 1. I'd still be without Kane, who I want for 27 and I want for 29 as well. So I'd have to use transfers to bring him in. Apart from at this point, I've only got 1 free transfer to do it. So that's for my personal team. Maybe you've only got 1 free transfer and you don't have any of these players. You could make the changes, but again, you need to look at a few things. 1, who are you taking out, right? And are you just taking them out for the sake of it because you're on a free hit? Like, are they actually good players that you should probably just have anyway? So how many changes are you actually making? And also, how many of those players do you want long-term anyway? Because if you do, maybe it's just worth using transfers and a few hits to bring them in. Like, I don't think the difference between using free hit in 29 and 26 or 33 or whenever you decide to use it will be that big, because I think this is where people get kind of lost with it. You will change your strategy, obviously, depending on when you use it. Like, if I use it now, then of course I'll use all my transfers to get to 29. If I decided I was going to use it in 29, well, maybe I don't need to bring in so many game week 29 players. Maybe I can focus on other areas. If I'm using it in 33, I don't have to worry about owning Spurs and Man City players because I can take them out in game week 33. So I change my strategy again. There's not a right or a wrong answer. If you want to use it in 26, that's absolutely fine. You should do that. If you want to absolutely smash the double game week, maybe change some defenders, because I think that's where I can't make big changes. I've got Wan-Bissaka and Ben Mee. I don't have the spare transfers to change them to like Luca Dean or Ricardo Pereira, whoever it might be, if I wanted to go for them. But are they needed? Right? Leicester still have to play Arsenal. It's not necessarily an easy game. Man United are playing Chelsea, but Leicester are playing Arsenal. So is that worth a free hit to change that defender? Probably not, because the other fixture for Wan-Bissaka is Crystal Palace. So not trying to put people off. Use it if you want, but you just have to figure out your strategy for the rest of the season. That's all. You know that if you use it this week, you don't have it for 29 to 33. So what changes do you need to make to your team? Have a think about that. If you're happy, go ahead and use it. There we go. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I will have team selection tomorrow, captaincy on Friday, deadline stream on Saturday. Loads more to come. Hopefully you enjoyed the watch line that I did yesterday. There will be more to come, but for now, I'm not sure how regularly or which matches there will be, but I'll definitely try and do some for Double Game Week 26, especially around who my triple captain is and stuff like that. I think that makes it quite exciting from an FPL point of view. So we'll see about that. Make sure you hit the notification bell when you do subscribe. And if you want to sign up to Patreon, patreon.com/letstalkfpl. There is a link in the description below. Thank you to everyone that's already signed up. I've had to go to 6 screens for this, and I might even have to go to 7 soon. So I'm probably going to have to think of a different way to display this. But thank you very much to Hesham and Patriosh S. I've definitely pronounced that wrong. I do apologise. Please hit me up on Patreon to let me know how to properly pronounce that. But thank you very much for watching. I'll be back maybe later today with another video. I'll see. If not, definitely tomorrow with team selection. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. And I'll catch you again soon.